Hi, my name is Ricky, and welcome to the third episode of Share Your Story. Share Your Story is all about men and women sharing their story with us. No matter if you were a combat medic or a cook on a ship, active or veteran, we want to hear about it. Check description for more information on how to apply. My third guest is an American, and we're all about to hear his story. His name is Carl. Hi, Carl. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Ricky.
Nice to hear. I want you to start from the beginning, how it all happened and where it all ended. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm a lot older. I'm in my mid 60s now, but back in the I want to say the mid 70s, early 70s, when I was in high school. At that time, Vietnam was going really hot and heavy, and of course, my mother was afraid that either myself or my brother or both of us would get drafted, and she really didn't want us to end up there. So anyway, since I graduated in 1975. By 1972, 1973, the U.S. had pulled out, and it wasn't soon after that Congress decided that after all the things they learned from Vietnam and the past, they finally just figured that a conscription army, draftees, just isn't going to cut it. Okay. So they decided to go to an all-volunteer professional military.
Oh.
And basically right out of high school, I visit the recruiters. I visit, of course, the Marines talked to me, and of course the Navy and that. But I decided to settle on the Air Force. So in 1975, I enlisted in the United States Air Force and went through basic training in San Antonio. And from there, I wanted to work on radios. So I went to Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. And if I'm going too fast, let me know, okay?
Because I'm all ears. I'm all ears.
Okay.
You just
anyway,
go.
After basic training, I went to Keesler Air Force Base, where I went to ground radio equipment school, and learned basically everything that the Air Force had at that time on fixing radios. And this was kind of in the early transistor days, so radios were rather kind of big at that particular time still.
Did you have like an interest in radio or technology?
I always had interest in electronics. I mean, I grew up with electronics, and I basically in high school I studied radios and electronics and all these other things. I'm a big science nerd.
Okay.
I'm a history nerd and a science nerd. So anyway, like I said, I went to Keesler Air Force Base, and I got ready. I finished my ground radio school. And my first assignment was at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas. It's now that Bergstrom's closed, but now the Air Force Base is the city airport.
Oh.
But anyway, I went there, and from there on, the guy who got picked me up was one I knew from tech school. He said, "Everything you learned about radios, forget it. You're not working on radios ever again."
Oh.
I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're now a ROMAD."
Well, what?
I said, what's a ROMAD? He said, well, it technically means radio, operator, maintenance, and driver. You're going to be going out in a Jeep with a bunch of radios in the back seat with an Air Force officer, and you're going to be assigned to an Army unit, and you're going to do you're going to have to learn how to do close air support.
Wait.
And I said,
what? Wow, that's a big change to everything.
Yeah. Well, they did the same thing in Vietnam, and at that particular time, they figured, okay, if he's a radio repairman, if something happens to the radios out in the field, he can fix them. But then again, after that, they went in garrison, and of course, I was in peacetime, and we had a dedicated radio maintenance shop, and they just basically didn't bother letting us, training us anymore on radios. We just learned how to do close air support.
Wow. But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't the plan for you from the start, was it?
No, that wasn't the plan. So then, anyway, of course, being an Air Force guy, I said I did not join the Air Force to go out and play with the Army. But they said, well, too bad. So anyway, but like I said, Vietnam was over, and it was technically peacetime. But that's also during the Cold War, so we had to be ready, just in case Russia decided they wanted to go into Germany, and we had to be ready to deploy to Europe. So we did a lot of training, and I got to work with lots of different units. I worked with armory units, infantry. I even got a chance to do a bit of work with ranger units. So I got a very good education on how the Army does things.
But so you were there because they wanted you to call in air support, and
Yeah. Well, so what happens? See, the thing is, though, it's just that the thing is, I had to learn how to talk Army,
okay,
and then take that Army talk and transfer it into Air Force to talk to the Air Force pilot and direct his eyes on the ground. He's flying up the pilot's flying up around, circling the area at high speeds in a jet, and I'm looking at a map and looking at things that I think he can see from the airplane, and just walking his eyes down from big to little to the target, and we just then he's going in, and I have to watch the airplane, make sure when he's rolling in, he's not pointed towards friendlies, and he's pointed directly somewhat in the Army, towards the enemy. Tell him he's cleared to drop his bombs, and then supposedly I would adjust from the bomb drop, either left, right, forward, back, to get bombs on target.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it started out, I hated it, but as you get older and you start, getting newer equipment, and of course, as you also increase in rank, you get more responsibilities, and you start learning a little bit more.
One thing
kind of started getting interesting.
One thing, you said there was like languages, and I understand what you mean, but there was the Air Force said one thing this way, and Army said this same thing differently. Is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, it's sort of things. The Army, they have to describe something to see on the ground.
Yeah.
I had to look at something that I see on the ground, and then I had to kind of figure out a way to describe it to the pilot in a way that he understands, but at the same time, also, since I'm talking on an open radio,
Okay.
the enemy don't hear it and don't get an idea, basically, who I'm talking about.
Yeah. So the pilot don't talk Army. That's what you're saying.
No, the pilot don't talk Army. The pilot talks Air Force.
Yeah.
And I had an Air Force pilot who was a fighter pilot, who they took out of the cockpit, and he was doing a tour as what they call air liaison officer.
Yeah.
And he was the officer side. He would talk to the officers, and then, of course, being the listed guy, we had to do the work.
Of course.
And and the thing is that we worked together as a team. So that's what they started calling us a Tactical Air Control Party, or a TACP, which is the name that they now consider. They call us TACPs.
Okay.
So anyway, like I said, I'm stationed at Berkshire Air Force Base, and I work with units at Fort Hood and other things. Of course, now also at that time, I got one particularly funny story.
Yeah.
When I was my first exercise with the Army, we was working with a unit at Fort Ord, and it just happens that the commander was George S. Patton's son.
What?
Was the commander of the Army, the division.
No, you're kidding.
No, he's not. So anyway, I'm here. I'm at the basically the division talk, and basically I'm just there to man the radios and just pass on information. I'm not qualified to do a lot of airstrikes yet. But anyway, and we have this one Air Force general comes down, and he looks around at the Army mess area, and he says, "You don't have any Air Force working here." And they said, "Oh yeah, we don't. They usually don't." But he thought, "Oh, I think they're a good idea." So anyway, guess who was the lowest ranking Air Force person there at that entire area? Me.
No, really?
So here they come and tell me that I got to get up early the next morning, and I have to report to the Army mess area, and I'm going to be pulling KP. And anyway, so that's what they do. They thought I was going to be there just a few hours and I could leave. But this Air Force general comes up. He's a brigadier, and he's shaking hands, telling me it's good to see the Air Force, And I had at the time in my right hand, I had a wet dish mouth, and I so wanted to shove it down his throat. But I didn't. I basically played the good little airman, said, "Thank you, sir. Yes, sir." Posed for pictures. And then I got back, and I reported it to my wing commander, who, then on the way up to my wing commander got mad. He blew a back gasket. He reported went all the way up to headquarters Air Force, and came back down through Air Force Army channel saying, from now on, TCPs do not do KP.
Why?
Because we're considered too important.
Oh, Yeah, kind of makes sense though. Yeah.
So anyway, I did that, and then I had my first overseas assignment. I went down to the Panama Canal Zone, and that was something that I still remember to the day. It was amazing.
I can imagine. So
You seeing all these locks and things that you read about, you see pictures of as a child. You get to see it in lifetime, and you're thinking, "Wow."
amazing.
Yeah.
So, do you work on were you on a boat at that point or a ship or you
No,
were
no.
on land?
I was working with down there. They had an infantry brigade, an independent
Oh
infantry
yeah.
brigade, and their job was to protect the canal. And we had Air Force units rotate in from the States, fighters and bomber units, and we would basically just practice, basically dropping bombs on the area, mainly there to protect the Panama Canal.
Well, I didn't know that that was a thing. What you were protecting against like attacks from the Russians?
Well, anybody. They had
Anybody?
during the World War II, they were always afraid the Japanese would attack
Oh yeah.
Panama and either destroy the canal. Because once you break it, you destroy a lock
Yeah.
in the Panama Canal, that thing's shut down.
Yeah.
So that they're there mainly to make sure they were worried about the Japanese coming in and bombing the canal, bombing the locks. So they always had an army units and Air Force and everything, Navy units assigned. They got everything down there, all there to protect the canal.
I didn't know that.
And
That was cool.
I was also there. Let's see here, that's about the same time Carter was president, and he negotiated the transition where they actually gave the canal over to Panama. And I was part of that. I was there during the treaty transition. So it was a lot of work with Panamanian units and teaching them how to do close air support. That we got to deploy down to Central and South America, working with Air Force units down there, and it was a fun assignment.
That sounds amazing. I gotta tell you, it sounds amazing.
From after that, I decided I wanted to take a break from being a ROMAD. So I cross trained out of being a ROMAD, and then I was a trained. I wanted to go work on televisions. So I got accepted, and I got I requested to be trained as a TV repairman. Got that assignment. Got that approved. So I went to Colorado for training in how to repair TVs. And then my next duty assignment was basically Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado Springs.
Wow. Repairing.
And have you heard about Cheyenne Mountain?
Somewhere in the back of my head, definitely. But tell me.
It's headquarters NORAD. It's basically an entire installation they have built inside of a mountain in Colorado Springs. And it's there because it's supposedly a hardened target.
Yeah.
In case the Russians ever, bombed, we're basically watching out for airplane, basically watching for missiles or airplanes or anything come over the North Pole.
That's cool.
And the TV and being working on TV, I would basically get able to sit in and watch the briefings that they would give the commanding general every shift on what's going on, things they need to worry about, and also they would had the anytime any Russian or Chinese airplanes were flying across the United States, they would let them know, and they track those things from from the minute they hit our airspace, they landed, and then when they left to fly out. So I got to follow a lot of that. Get to learn a lot about how the air traffic control system. Basically the Air Force watches over the airplanes that's flying over the country.
But is that let's see here. Is that some covert, like a base, and there's a hidden entrance, or is it just everyone?
Oh no, it's not a hidden entrance. Basically, if you go online and you look up Cheyenne Mountain City Complex,
Yeah.
and they'll show pictures of the gate with the blast doors, maybe some pictures inside. Everybody knows it's there, and it's kind of like it's that big middle finger to the Russians or whoever has the missiles. And yeah, go ahead and try and bomb it. You're not going to stop us.
Yeah, because you can't break the mountain. You got to go through the mountain first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically, we had to drive. We'd either meet down at the Peterson Air Force Base and get on a bus and drive up. The bus take us up, or we could drive up halfway up the mountain. They had a big parking lot out there where you could park your vehicles and just walk in, and you had to have your badge, of course. If you don't have your badge, you're going to have trouble. You're going to get shot for trying to infiltrate because
Were
they take
you?
it very seriously.
Did you wear like a uniform, or you were like a?
Yeah, we had wear uniforms and everything
Yeah,
else. It's all it's all military and or civilians, but we all had an ID badge we had to wear.
yeah, yeah.
And
To
if
get
you
in.
didn't have a badge, then you weren't authorized to be there.
Okay, okay. So what was your main
So,
job there?
basically working on TVs and also making sure they had like a they had a TV studio there, and occasionally they would film things, for just to be broadcast on the internal system. We had a connection with the outside where we could people watch TV, TV from outside during their shift if they had nothing else to do. And of course, also it was just like an complete Air Force base, but it was just inside a mountain. Of course, no airplanes, nothing like that.
But it
And
was was it a
we had a
part
lot
of?
of Canadians working there too.
Oh, but it was part of of the Air Force.
Yeah, yeah. The Air Force was the controlling factor, but we had,
Yeah,
we had all the services there because they had Army generals. Sometimes they would pull the sneak. They were in charge of the control room. So and also they had Canadian generals and a lot of occasionally we'd have they would bring in foreign officers as training just to let them know what we had, mainly NATO officers.
that's cool. That's really cool. So how long did you stay there?
I just stayed there for a couple of years, and then I got another overseas assignment where went back to being a ROMAD. Only this time I was going to Korea,
Oh,
and I was stationed at Camp Red Cloud, which is up in Wiersema, Korea, which is very near the DMZ.
yeah.
And we was working there with Korean units, and the idea is again I'm basically doing close air support.
So you were part of the Korean War.
Yeah, the war's still going on because
Yeah.
just all they had was just a ceasefire to end it. Nothing. There's no declared peace. It's just a ceasefire, and it's still considered an active war zone.
Okay. How did you feel about that? Because that's like,
Well,
yeah,
it's my job. It's my job to do, and basically, it's just after a while. By then, I was a sergeant, so I was basically in a position where I was one basically controlling, telling the airmen what to do. So it was a little more palatable for me because
yeah.
now I was more or less in the supervisory staff, and it's just an idea of again, just just you going out doing close air support and training. Only difference is that the airplanes usually had Korean markings instead of U.S. markings. And I got to see a lot of older airplanes too.
Yeah. Did something happened? Like,
Not much. They had the DMZ. They had an instance, just prior to I went there when they went to cut down some trees and some North Koreans, attacked them with axes, and that was kind of caused some trouble for a while. But I think it pretty died down when I got there. So most of the time it was just fairly quiet.
they
We just
attack they
trained and everybody was ready to go.
with axes?
Yeah, they had a thing where they had a tree that was blocking the view.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they sent a cleanup crew over to clean, to cut down the branches with chainsaws and that. But while they're doing it, the North Korean soldiers came into the DNC. It's kind of like a no man's land, and they attacked people with axes.
Oh my lord.
And so anyway, this happened long time ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what year was this?
This is basically in I want to say like about 19. See here, see, 19. Like I was there in the early 80s.
Early 80s. Okay, so I was
Yeah,
born at least. Thank you.
yeah, I was in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
So I was there for a year on that, and then after that, I went from there back to Panama.
Oh, okay.
Now at that time, by the time my first tour, toward the end of my first tour in Panama, I had married a Panamanian girl. And we wanted to go. She wanted to go back home, so I just let me see if I can get Panama as that assignment. So I went down there, and this is after the treaty transition had gone into effect, and it went from basically for a lot of guys, Panama was their retirement tour. To actually, they started getting serious about taking care of protecting things.
Yeah.
So anyway, I spent 3 years there in Panama, and it was again constant training. But by then I was I had made staff sergeant, so now I had a lot more responsibilities and a lot more. I working at higher levels, so I had moved from basically like a company level as a airman up to a battalion, working a battalion staff as a staff sergeant. And again, I'm there now. I'm also started training their troops on close air support because the idea is you get down to like the squad level and things like that. They may not have an Air Force guy right there, so they kind of had to have the basics of close air support.
So when you were training people to use close air support, what kind of training how did you went about to teach?
Well, it's just one thing. I just kind of told them the Air Force system,
Yeah.
basically how first off how to request the air, and I gave them the process the Air Force uses once they get the request to determine whether determine where it fits in if they have flights available, and then how they would be notified, and then I would brief them, teach them how to when the mission's ready to go, when they get their airplanes online, teaching them how to basically give the air pilot the basic information he needs to drop the bombs.
How would that sound like if you?
It's kind of thing. Well, we have a thing called a 9-line where we the pilot comes checks in. We would have their call signs. We would both we would have classified things where we could authenticate each other through a process, alphabetical process.
Yeah.
Then basically we would tell the pilot, we know where the pilot is circling, give them a heading and distance to from there to to where the target is, and then again it's also watching, and we might have somebody down there with a mirror ready to flash it. We might have somebody with smoke in case the pilot wants a smoke mark to mark friendly location, so he knows where we're at. And then again, just talking his eyes from big things down to the little things of the target. And we had a bomb range out there where we had a lot of targets. A lot of pilots been out there, so they knew everything was. But we kind of had to ways to spice up the scenario. Basically, of course, might have somebody every now and then. We have some unit out there with they have these little rockets they launch up that wouldn't fly very high, but they had a big smoke trail, and the idea is just to get the pilots to keep an eye out for AAA or anything else, SAMs.
Yeah, I know what that is. But what was there for you a situation where you actually called in air support in a situation? Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but was there a situation?
I know
Yeah.
Go. Yeah, again, that's most times peacetime, so a lot of it was just training, nothing really happened in there. By the time I had gone back down to Panama for Operation Just Cause when I was back in the States, but by then I was basically working at the brigade, or I was working at brigade level, where basically I was just sitting at the top and I was just more or less coordinating. But it's one of the things where you train to do something for your entire life, and you can do it if you have to. But then once you get such a high rank, you pretty much have promoted yourself out of being out there playing with play. Because always we airmen, you think that the sergeants always got it good because they can just sit out there and they sit in the talk and do nothing. But when you get you make sergeant and you miss, you envy the airmen because they're out there playing with the equipment, talking to the airplanes, actually doing the close air support, and you kind of wishing you could get out there and do it again yourself.
Yeah, but so you went above staff sergeant now?
No, I got out of staff, but no, I never got hired as staff. Basically, I had gotten out as a staff sergeant. So, but by then, basically, after you've been in like 12, 13 years or whatever, you're at that level where you have an expertise that they want to keep you close to the decision makers.
Yeah.
As for give advice, and also how to handle the equipment, and also NCOs were supposed to know how to coordinate and how to supervise the troops. So we're kind of more in a supervisory position than an actual operational position.
So how many people did you actually train? Do you have like a figure on that one?
More time I would work on like Army squads, so that'd be like say like 8 to 10 people in an Army squad, and then of course I had my own guys, about 8 to 10 that I supervised. Plus, also had other additional duties. I was my my last assignment, which is up in Fort Ord, California, with the supporting the 190 the 7th Infantry Regiment. Infantry Division, I mean. It was mobility and CO, so it was my job to make sure that everybody and all the vehicles were ready to go in case the balloon went up and we actually got deployed, which we finally did for Operation Just Cause.
Okay, so Operation Just Cause, was that in Panama?
That was the Panama operation. That's where we sent down a whole airborne division and plus everything else just to arrest Noriega.
Oh yeah. What did something happen you in this operation?
Well, again, it's more or less it's just I was working in the TOC in the operations center, so I never got a chance to really get out in the woods very much. But you could listen to sometimes guys were actually hear gunfights going on around them. You could hear the bullets popping off, the guns popping off, and they're working closer support, and you're listening to them. So it's just you get to hear it, but it's that by then you're just not in a position where you can really do it yourself anymore.
Yeah, it seems like the best spot, to be honest. Who was?
Yeah. That's where it was basically.
Enlighten me. Who was the individuals who was the enemy at this point?
But mainly at that time, it was mainly the. Okay, let's see. In Panama, they didn't have a police force. They had what they called the Guardia Nacional, National Guard.
Yeah.
They were the police and the army. So they were mainly, and they had a lot of units that were still, pretty much, loyal to Noriega. And when they had the election in Panama, and the person that got elected wasn't Noriega's handpicked guy. So that's when he more or less installed. He nullified the election and installed his own guy, and then he had that video of Noriega bouncing his machete on the lectern, basically declaring war in the United States, and they had killed a lieutenant, an army lieutenant, basically in the city, and that's kind of what set off, the whole deployment.
Yeah. For me, this is vaguely Noriega. I am a military fanatic, but this is just vaguely something I read about. So how long were you a part of the operation?
I was there for about 2 weeks. It's mainly during the Christmas holidays, and basically pretty much everything we deployed down there pretty much rolled through everything, the entire Panamanian Defense Force, and basically we shut down the whole National Guard, and then we started reinstating it as a national police force, and that's all they did was just doing police stuff.
Okay.
We kind of had some indication things going on, because we did have a few alerts prior to this where we'd go out, and they had about the same time this one general was trying to run his own coup against Noriega, but then he got knocked out pretty early, so we turned that into just a training mission. Plus there's been a few also, like when Spadafora got killed in Costa Rica. And that kind of we was on alert for that, but it wasn't until finally that Just Cause, where President Bush finally said enough is enough.
Yeah.
So and then while I was there, basically after being there for about a couple of weeks and things pretty much quieted down, they started rotating people back to the States, and at that time, then also they had an announcement that the Air Force had a sudden budget shortfall for pay. And they're letting people who basically wanted out to go ahead and just separate without, any penalties. So I was basically completely burned out from basically doing all this stuff. And I figured, okay, I got my combat ribbon. I'm in one piece. So it's time to get out. So I got out. And then after that, I joined the Air Force Reserves, where I worked on F-16 fuel systems.
For the airplane.
Station. Yeah, back working on airplanes. Then I was at Luke Air Force Base, was my reserve base, and we actually was this has been the original desert prior to Desert Storm. Desert Shield was starting to get going, and we were sending, troops to Afghanistan back during the Bush administration.
Yeah.
And of course, they didn't send our unit per se, but we was all more or less all ready to go. Because they figured, hey, we work in a desert, we'd be perfect. But they had other units they wanted to send over there, legacy units in the military that they want to send first.
So was it like repair? You repaired, or?
Yeah, fuel system. Basically, I learned how to work on and fix, not fix a pump, but in case you had a bad fuel pump, I had to get in there and replace the fuel pump out of the airplane fuel tank.
Yeah.
And it just also occasionally and then also I take it back. I had moved up to Oregon and transferred up to the reserve unit up in Oregon at the Portland International Airport, and there we was mainly a rescue squadron. So I got to actually work with PJs on occasion.
What is that?
Pararescue.
Pararescue, yeah.
Yeah, it's considered basically they're like the Air Force elite. They're like the Air Force version of Navy SEALs.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Their job is, of course, to go into war zones to rescue down pilots, but they do a lot of rescue stuff, out with the in the mountains, because they have to rescue a lot of climbers up in the mountains. So
yeah.
the pararescue guys get a lot of training up in that area.
Yeah. Luckily, civilian people mess up so they can train on helping them.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of way it is. And that's pretty much my entire career. I mean, most time was peacetime. So I really didn't do a heck of a whole lot, but
I think you did. I think you did a lot.
I did see a lot of things where I did see a lot of a lot of the world.
I think it was an amazing story, Carl, and I enjoyed every second of it. How many years was it?
I did 14 years active duty. I could have done 20, but also I had a weight problem at the particular time, and I just got tired of fighting the weight and everything else. And it was also I was just tired. I would basically for 14 years I had been on alert. I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to get my degree, which I thanks to the GI Bill, I was able to get my degree in history and social sciences eventually. I went to Portland State University in Portland, Oregon, which I absolutely enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me like you had a really nice career and everything just went out just good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just basically nothing serious happened.
I'm happy for it.
Of course I do know guys like I know one guy he went to he was in the Grenada operation.
Yeah.
Where they went down to Grenada and they rescued those college students. And he was telling stories about that.
Yeah. I mean,
so I've known a lot of people because also all the older guys I work with, they were all Vietnam vets, and basically the stories they would tell about Vietnam, basically what happened on your seat. So I heard a lot. I saw places like I'd never see in my lifetime.
Is there?
When I was in Panama, I got to visit like Central and South America, and I got to see like a lot of the Mayan and the Inca ruins and things like that, and that was just amazing.
That's what I wanted to ask, if there's something you saw during your 14 years that I get that, because that would be a treat to see in Panama.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Panama, like that. So anyway, it was more or less I say it's just I don't want to say it's a 14-year vacation because but I earned my money, I did my job, and I really miss it. I mean, there are times where I wish I would have stayed in and maybe got a commission, and maybe, of course, I'm too old to stay now, but I would love to be out there in Afghanistan or Iran with Iraq with the kids now.
I get
and just
that.
Teaching them what I know.
Yeah, and I think you would be a really valuable assets for the younger men out in the field. Carl, I enjoyed this very much, and I am super humbled, and thank you so much for being a part of the military podcast. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. We're gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening, and we see you next time.